Hello, everyone. Welcome to another MarketBeat Monday. We are so glad you joined us today. If you're new here, if this is one of your first live streams with us, we are going to cover a lot today. We have our Chris Markoch and Thomas Hughes with us today, who will go over stocks that you want to hear about. Thanks for adding to the list in the chat. We will get to as many of these names as we can. I've also compiled a list of stocks that a lot of our viewers have asked about over the last week in our other videos. So I put that list together too. But we always start off with Chris and Thomas. Guys, thanks again for being here today. Just kind of going an overview of what to expect in the market. The first 5 to 10 minutes here, we're going to talk about some of the big market movers that are coming up, some of the big happenings from last week too. So Chris and Thomas, our first topic today, it's the thing that everyone's talking about, and that's Bitcoin's new all-time highs. It's kind of hard not to talk about Bitcoin right now.
Right. Yeah. Congress is getting ready, or they're going to try to pass a bunch of bills. And that's really good news for the industry. Give some clarity, some stability, pave the way for more stable coins and more use case scenarios, which is just very bullish for all of Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrency universe.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much going on in cryptocurrency right now. Like you said, I think the lawmakers talking about it, they call it Crypto Week in Congress. I think that's why we're seeing so much moves happening right now. If you're not in crypto, if you've kind of stayed out of the whole crypto market, if it's just unfamiliar territory to you, there's a lot of different ways that investors can get involved or get exposure to cryptocurrency through the stock market. So let's talk about some of those stocks out there. Chris, if you want to talk about a couple names that are interesting ways for traditional investors who would rather be in the stock market to get some exposure to crypto.
So I'll go back to one name that we talked about last week. Actually, you brought it up, Bridget, that our listeners wanted to hear about. I had a chance to kind of dive into it a little bit more this week, so I can talk about it a little bit more intelligently. That's IREN Limited. Its ticker symbol is IREN. So the argument here is if you're looking for a different way to invest in Bitcoin, this is a Bitcoin miner. It's an Australian company, and it's considered a pure play for Bitcoin because the company's effectively leveraged to Bitcoin prices. If Bitcoin goes up, then the company's margins expand dramatically. And it's one of the unique things about this company is that all of its mining is done using 100% renewable power, mostly hydropower. So you're seeing in demand for the company because it's going to help manage power costs over time for some of these companies that are building out things like data centers that are going to be power hogs. And the company has a solid balance sheet, and it looks like it might be benefiting from fund adoption. So this is one way that investors can get in on Bitcoin, is to get in on mining stocks, and this is one of the ones that you could look at.
Yeah, we had a live stream on Thursday, a special live stream here at MarketBeat. If you missed that one, you can go back and watch. We had an options trader who really gave some really interesting options plays for some of these Bitcoin mining stocks. So if you haven't watched that one yet, go back and watch that past live stream. That was on Thursday of last week. It's a really interesting conversation and gives a couple of other names similar to IREN that you could talk about or look at investing in as well. All right, Chris and Thomas, let's talk about another one. Thomas, you had another interesting way to play cryptocurrency right now, and that's GameStop. This meme stock that people have been talking about for years really seems to be tied to Bitcoin now.
Well, I wouldn't call it an interesting way to play Bitcoin, but it's an interesting name to talk about with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I mean, GameStop has been slowly eating itself to death over the last few years with its core business, and it's made that shift into trying to become a Bitcoin repository. This year, it made its first Bitcoin purchase. But if you look at the chart now, it's not responding favorably to the news of Bitcoin hitting new highs. If anything, the chart looks more bearish than before. The market's been selling off. The last few weeks is kind of flat, but we're underneath critical support levels. It's very possible that we'll see Bitcoin or GameStop sell off to new lows pretty soon. And I think that's because the strategy is just real questionable. As I said, they're kind of following in MicroStrategy's footsteps, where they're just going to use their cash to buy Bitcoin, hopefully sell Bitcoin when it rises, make some cash doing that. But it's not really a sustainable business model, because they're going to have to continuously whittle down shareholder value with debt offerings and share offerings, which they're already starting to do in order to raise cash to buy more Bitcoin. So yeah, GameStop, something to watch, interesting name to talk about. I wouldn't buy it to invest to get exposure to Bitcoin, but I certainly would watch it just for the entertainment value.
Entertainment value is how I think Thomas and Chris have watched GME for the last couple of years. It's more entertainment value than anything. But there's definitely investors who made some money and lost some money during all of the GMA or GME excitement, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go on to another name that is tied to crypto. This will be our last one, and then we're going to dive into some of the lists that you guys have shared here. We want to talk about MicroStrategy. That's kind of the more no-brainer play for getting into cryptocurrency or exposure to cryptocurrency through the traditional market.
Well, right. I mean, I already touched base on them a little bit. They kind of leaned into this becoming a Bitcoin repository a few years ago, where they've kind of abandoned their original business. They're still doing it to some degree, but not seriously. They're using their money. They're using their balance sheet to leverage shareholder value to get cash to buy Bitcoin. They're able to make some money with buying and selling. But again, it's really this kind of unsustainable model where they're going to keep building their Bitcoin balance, but shareholders are going to pay for it the whole while, slowly like eroding their value. So where it ends, it's hard to say. Right now, the stock price is up. It's tracking in alignment with Bitcoin, but we're not at a new high. It's possible, based on the technicals, that this market's capped. Momentum looks very weak. I would certainly be skeptical, cautious getting into this one right now.
Very good. Well, guys, let's move on to some other hot topics this week. I've got a good list of names from the group here that they want to talk about. Thanks for joining in the chat and telling us what you're interested in. We are going to cover them. eHelp, I've got yours on the top of the list. You messaged earlier today. I've got the first one is Redcat that they want to talk about. So we're going to get to those two stocks next. But first, I want to talk about tariffs just briefly here. That's some of the news of the week. Over the weekend anyway, there were more tariff threats. I think what we're noticing in the market right now is we're not seeing big reactions to some of these tariff headlines or threats or almost headlines that we were seeing a couple of months ago. The market seemed really reactive to any kind of tariff news, and now it doesn't seem to be reacting very much. What's your take on that, guys?
I think the market right now, they've seen this dance play out over the last few months where tariffs are announced and then I wouldn't say they're walked back, but it's sort of like as soon as an announcement's made that we're going to tariff a country X amount, then the country says, oh, okay, now we're going to get serious about negotiating, which is just kind of frustrating because it's like, why weren't you serious about negotiating in the first place? And so now I think we're just in that wait and see mode. I think the market knows deals are going to get done. And for most countries, it's probably going to be around that 10% mark. And for others, it might be higher. And it's all kind of frustrating, but I think the market just figures that it's going to work itself out. And it's just a matter of when.
Yeah, and in many cases, other countries are going to have to play ball to some degree. I mean, They're going to have to come to the table to some degree. They're going to have to make some concessions to some degree to make this thing go away. If they don't, he's crazy. He's crazy. He's going to follow through with this thing. He's going to keep escalating this tariffs thing. He's going to put the pressure on them and make it happen. So it could take a long time. It could take a while. It could happen any day now. I mean, but
exactly.
I think that the market, what Chris is saying, the market is pricing in that deals will be made. People will capitulate. Worst case scenario is not going to happen. We're already starting to see that's kind of in the analyst activity. I think Bank of America today raised their estimates for Q2 and for the full year earnings outlook because they're saying these very same things. Worst case scenario just is not happening. We've still got resilient, strong fundamental tailwinds. Growth is going to slow in the second half, but it's not going to crater. And so I think also moving forward, we're going to start seeing more outperformance in Q2. We'll see more analyst upgrades, sentiment brightening in this regard, and helping to lift the stock market in general.
Yeah, we just had a question come in that from Colt. That's a really good point to switch to, and that's kind of taking a look at how real estate stocks and the tax bill might impact some of those stocks at this point. We have eHelp wants to hear about a real estate stock called AGNC, so we're going to get to that one next. But just in general, what are we seeing in the real estate commercial market right now?
Let me.
Well,
Again, for some of our
Yeah.
new viewers out there in the live stream, this is all fresh content. We throw these questions at
Yeah,
our analysts very
Right.
live, so we give
So
them a couple of seconds to figure it out before we get going.
I'm just looking at the XLRE, the real estate sector ETF index tracking stock. It's really been lagging and it's not really doing well right now. It's sold off in April like everybody else did, hit a bottom. It's rebounded since then, but it's really just been trending sideways in the middle of this long-term range. I think really it's waiting for something to happen, and this tax bill probably isn't it. Really what we need to see is interest rates to fall, to unfreeze the housing market, the new home market, the resale market, to get all of these stocks to start moving again.
Yeah, well, let's look at one in particular. This was one that came in from one of our viewers, AGNC Investment. This is a REIT that's out there. The chart there, I'm going to pull up the chart right now, looks kind of like what you just said, Thomas. It's down a little bit, not really going much of anywhere right now. Anything about this particular company to talk about?
Let me pull up the page and see what they say. See what I can find.
Looking at the analyst forecast, there does seem to be
Right,
just
right, right.
a brief upside, but really it's trading around where the consensus price target is.
Right. So what I'm seeing is this company is investing in residential mortgages. And
Yeah.
so this is the market that we need to see unstuck. We need to see interest rates come down for this market to pick back up. Until then, though, it seems like it's a pretty solid play. It has pretty good cash flow. Market sentiment seems to be pretty positive. Pretty good amount of faith in the dividend, which right now is yielding 15%. I mean, 15%. This is a stock that people who income investors, long-term buy and hold investors, probably want to go check out and see 15%, a safe, reliable 15%. I mean,
And it's a
Well-
monthly, right?
where else are you going to get that? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really high yield dividend to look at. A good suggestion, eHelp. Thanks for bringing that one up.
Yeah.
Let's move on to a different sector now, and I'll give you guys some time to pull up the chart. I've got to pull it up myself too. We want to talk about SoFi. We've had a number of viewers over the last week that really want to hear about SoFi. A couple people in the chat have also asked to talk about that one. So what's going on with SoFi this week?
SoFi has a lot of positive tailwinds. First, it's just an innovative fintech. It's resonating with consumers. It's building its client base and its volume, its penetration. It's also getting a tailwind from the student loan changes and from cryptocurrency. It's definitely going to be a beneficiary for lending with student loans, with privatization of student loans, and with the crypto market being unfrozen. There'll certainly be an avenue here for consumers to get involved with cryptocurrency. With the chart, the stock price is rising. We broke out above a critical resistance point just a few weeks ago. Volume is rising. The indicators look good. Looks like this stock will keep going. Probably hit 25 before the end of the year, and may keep on rising after that.
Yeah, I think all eyes right now with SoFi are going to be on the earnings, which come out at the end of the month. And, right now, analysts haven't been writing that price up. So right now it's trading above consensus, at least on MarketBeat. So, but if SoFi delivers a solid earnings report, which it sounds like they will, yeah, that could be the catalyst that does exactly what Thomas said. Then you're going to start seeing this stock really break out.
Very good. All right, let's move on to another one. We've got so many names coming in on the chat today. I love to see it. Let's talk about Redcat. This is one we've talked about before. This is moving us more to the defense sector again. Chris, I know that's something we've talked about before. First, what is this company for those who might not have heard of it before?
Right. So we have talked about this one before, Bridget. This is a company that's they're a picks and shovel play on the primarily the drone industry, which is very popular right now. And one of the things that we've talked about before, Bridget, was this company just got through doing an equity offering, and that's generally dilutive to shareholders, but that's past them now. And I suggested a few weeks ago, I said, now you're going to probably see investors get engaged with the stock because now that they know the equity offerings behind the company, it gives the stock room to go up, and it certainly has. It's up 50% in the last 5 days. It's up 23% in the last month. Stock's just on fire right now. And it reports earnings, it doesn't report earnings until mid-August, but right now, certainly this is a company that that investors are looking at in this very, very attractive space, especially now that the One Big Beautiful Bill is passed, and you're going to start seeing an increase in defense spending, but not just an increase in defense spending for the sake of an increase. You're seeing, you've heard Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, you've heard President Trump talk about the fact that these are going to be the spend here is going to be to modernize the military for the battles that we're going to be fighting in the future, and that's going to mean drones.
Technology, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really interesting things to talk about here is the thing that we're waiting for in drones. We know that's where the investment is going.
Yeah.
We know that the military has more dollars to spend now, that spending is increased. And it all comes down to who is going to get the contracts. We had a CEO on the channel a couple of weeks ago who said, you can expect to see some of those announcements coming yet this year. And that's going to be the biggest difference, I think, is who gets the contracts. And I think that's what people are waiting to see at earnings too, is who's getting the contracts, how big are they, and are there more coming yet? So it'll be interesting to see. Another name that was shared here was KTOS. That's another drone company. Dragonfly Drones is another one we talked about. Really quick, just because I think it's an interesting discussion point. We did a video, Chris, talking about the big military players versus these smaller companies.
Correct.
Do we think that we're going to see, maybe Thomas, I'll get your viewpoint on this. Do you think that more of these military contracts will go to those really big, well-known companies who also have a drone program? Or do you think that we're going to see kind of a turning to these specialized, smaller companies to win these huge government contracts?
Well, I think it's kind of going to go both ways because a lot of these smaller companies have partnerships with the larger players. It's very similar to the pharmaceutical industry, where the big names have lots of partnerships with these smaller startup tech companies. So a lot of the advances are going to be made in the small startups. They're going to be leveraged by the big players. You're going to have some takeover opportunities. But I think generally speaking, any defense company that has got a well-established next generation segment, technology, AI, unmanned, any kind of remote operated technology is really going to do well over the next few years. As Chris was saying, we're looking for a pretty significant boost in defense spending, and it's going to be centered heavily in technology, especially in these unmanned and AI capable advanced technologies.
Yep.
Very good. Well, another tech company that someone just brought up in the chat today, this is new, so I want to give you some time to look into it. It's Credo Technology, CRDO. If you want to pull up that stock chart a little bit, I'll pull it up for our viewers here. It looks like an interesting company, again, playing in the new technology field, not necessarily in the defense sector, but it's a semiconductor company on high performance connectivity solutions for data centers and enterprise networks. So this is more of that data center discussion on these live streams. That those data center plays are something a lot of viewers are interested in, a lot of investors are looking at because they've seen so much movement. We talked about Applied Digital, we've talked about other ones, and this company is also seeing that similar big movement in their chart. They're up 220% almost over the last year, 47% year to date. So a lot of movement in that stock. Have you guys covered this company before?
I have, and I'm trying to refresh my memory, but they're involved with like high-powered advanced connectivity for data centers. And I'm trying to look it up right now. They're partnered with NVIDIA or AMD, I forget, maybe both of them, to produce these next generation data centers. So that they're becoming pretty well established as a next gen technology company, pretty critical to AI infrastructure.
Yeah, it looks like a really interesting company. Thanks for sharing that name to the list. Yeah. Some other interesting names coming out here. CrowdStrike we talked about before when it comes to military. RBRK, another interesting play in the military. I love to see all these conversations happening with different stocks out there. I feel like we could talk about endless numbers of stocks on this, so it's hard to know where to go sometimes. Let's get into some other names. Another one that we've talked about on the channel and in the last live stream too was that AMPX, I believe.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that one next, guys.
Yeah, and Emprius Technologies, them and also Innovix are really hot right now. They make silicone anode lithium ion batteries. So it's traditional lithium ion batteries with the next generation anode design based on silicon. They perform better in high energy situations. They have higher energy density, higher energy output. They charge quicker, so they have application in a lot of different applications, vehicles, EVs, consumer applications, but also in aerospace and with drones. Emprius Technologies has quite a few contracts with drone makers, also with eVTOL makers. We talk about eVTOL here a lot. Joby and Archer are both on track for commercialized production of their vehicles, which means there could be a huge demand for Emprius batteries. The story with results in the news cycle right now is they've been ramping their production capacity. They've been building revenue. The pipeline is growing very quickly. The deal volume is accelerating. They're supposed to enter a hyper growth phase where they grow by a triple-digit pace over the next year or two. And all of these outlooks are probably cautious because of the pace of deals that are building, and it's all starting to show in the stock price.
Yeah, I think what I like about this one too is it still seems early. Obviously, the company isn't that large yet, but looking at the chart and what this stock is trading at, it still seems like a really early play for a company being around that under $7, still almost in that penny stock range. Do you see this growth happening like quite a bit? Is there a long potential for this, or is that growth going to be a little bit slower for this to really catch on?
Oh no, this company is going to grow rather fast. It's going to grow at a triple-digit pace in the 200%, 300% range over the next year or 2 years, probably sustain a triple-digit pace for a year or two after that, then sustain double-digit growth long after that, simply because of the demand for these batteries. I think I said this the last time that we talked about it. Emprius, with its battery design, is akin to EVs and the automobile industry. Automobile sales in general aren't growing, but EV is growing pretty rapidly within the automobile industry, taking it over. This company has opportunity to really supersede the existing battery market with its new technology.
Yeah, I think I have a really good question here from Michael, wondering about a lot of these are already on the uptrend. They're already
Right.
getting a big boost right now. So is it just good to watch these and wait for a pullback, or is now a time to get in just because they could grow even exponentially more from where they are right now?
I think with Emprius, this stock is going to rise significantly over the next few years, and probably starting pretty soon, it may start making some pretty quick jumps higher. Waiting for a price pullback could be real risky. You may end up trading an opportunity at 750 for one at 15. Because what I'm seeing in the chart right now is a pretty good looking reversal. It's taken the company about 2 years after its IPO to hit its bottom, gain some traction, but since then volume has been rising steadily. We have like volume escalated, and then from there it just started to rise. This most recent action has the stock breaking above a critical resistance point on even another bigger volume spike. So we've got volume, MACD, stochastic, all converging with these new highs. Tells me this market is getting stronger and it's really ready to make a much larger move higher.
The difficult part there, Bridget, and I respect the caller or the investor's questions, because the company reports earnings on August 6th. And it's a really tricky time, because so for all the positives that Thomas said, and I think there are positives, and I'll throw another positive in there, is that 80% of the company's revenue is tariff protected. So they're great in that sense. Is the company's got 48, I think as of the last earnings report, they had like $48 million in cash on hand. And the company's CEO even said they're burning like $2.5 to $3 million per month. Now, that could change very quickly if, as Thomas says, a lot of these contracts come through. But in the meantime, they're still burning cash, and that 48 million wouldn't last that long in that scenario. But I think that's the challenge, and I respect the question that was asked. The challenge of getting in right now is it's like a couple weeks before that earnings report, and boy, if the earnings report doesn't do what they think it's going to do, you could get that pullback. But to Thomas's point, if they beat, then you're going to start seeing the stock probably go. The analysts are saying it's got like a $10 price target, so there could be significant upside. It's the risk you take with a stock like this, but I think if you're going to get in, I think now is the time to at least start a position. You don't have to take your full position now, but I think if you're going to get in, I think this is the time to get in.
Yeah, I think this is a good segue into one of the viewers just asked a question, but it was on my list to talking about waiting for those pullbacks. A company we've talked about a lot over the last month is BigBear.ai, and that's seen a pullback right now. What are our thoughts on the pullback in this one?
Well, my opinion about BigBear.ai hasn't really changed. I think it's certainly could be a great company. It's got business. The problems that I have with it are that it's not making a lot of money right now. The growth trajectory seems to be a little bit muted. It's also facing headwinds and hurdles with competition. Palantir really would be the first mover in this space with the government contracts and with commercial contracts. So, Big Bear may be able to pull it off, but right now I think there's a lot of hurdles that are going to keep me and other investors out of it. Right now, the chart action shows the market kind of topping out at $8, so I would be concerned about it at that price level. If it moves higher and sets a new high, the news story changes. Maybe my opinion will change, but right now I think BigBear.ai is one to keep on the watch list and maybe put the money somewhere else.
If you were going to buy on the pullback on Big Bear, what kind of price target would you be looking for, Thomas?
Probably down to 450 or lower.
That's quite the pullback for this one, and I think some investors would be excited to see that come to load up if you're a Big Bear fan, or if you already got in on this one, that might be a little bit harder to see. So it'd be interesting to follow this one and see what happens, if it follows that Palantir path or not. Let's move on to some other names. I'm going to give you guys some to look up here, just so that we have some time for you to look at it. Chris, why don't you look up INOD? This is a digital solutions provider. That one's an interesting one. INOD, that came from a suggestion. And then Thomas, you can look up RBRK. This one is a cloud data management.
Yep, I know that one.
All right. What do you know about that one so far? Maybe we can start with that one, Thomas.
Well, I know it's cybersecurity, and it's got a pretty solid client base. It's been building its client base, deepening penetration. All of the fundamental drivers have been pretty positive. We're looking at C282, looking at another pretty substantial YOY revenue gain with the next report. Tends to outperform consensus. Yeah, I mean, I generally like cybersecurity right now. This is definitely a good player in the space, differentiated, focusing on data. Stock chart looks pretty good. Rallying. We have a little bit of a pullback right now, but in rally mode, volume is rising. We're expecting, good things with the report.
Yeah, that's a good company to bring up and a good space to bring up. Cybersecurity stocks are very hot right now. They have a lot more upside on the consensus price target too. I'm looking at a lot of these companies, even though they might be up right now, the analysts are still expecting even more to come from a lot of the cybersecurity stocks. So that's an interesting name to look at. Chris, have I given you enough time to look at our other one, INOD?
Yeah, so this is the company is, I think it's pronounced Innodata. I'm not exactly sure. The ticker symbol, again, like you said, is INOD. Interesting company. It's the first time I'm looking at it. It's so from what I can tell, it's a company that's involved in training AI models. So it's kind of the data aggregation and that's used in supplying training data and testing outputs for AI models. So it's kind of got a good niche here because that work is becoming more complicated as the large language models are getting bigger and we're starting to see more regulation in this space. So it's got a good positioning in that sense. One of the concerns about it is that about 61% of the company's revenue comes from one client. And so that's something that some people are a little bit concerned about. So that would be roughly, if I'm just looking at this, roughly about about 30 million of the company's about 58 million comes from one client, and that's got some investors a little bit skittish about it, but it's got about 10% upside according to analysts, and it is a profitable company. So let's say that but it's made a pretty significant run over the last, over the past, even the 5 years. It's up over 3,000% in 5 years, 197% over last year, 27% this year. So it's in the right market. It's just a question of right now where the stock can go.
Well, thank you for diving into that one. I'm going to get to a few more names on the list. I love to see all of the different suggestions coming in. As you can tell, we're giving a pretty brief overview, but at least pulling up the chart and giving some quick analysis of these different companies. And we're going to kind of rapid fire continue going through these. So the next couple of names we have are more popular ones. Thomas, I know you've talked about Shopify before. We've got a couple of viewers who want to hear about what's happening with Shopify right now. And then Reddit is another one. So Chris, I'll have you talk about Reddit. And Thomas, if you can cover Shopify for us now. Let's just dive into, Thomas, some background on Shopify.
Well, yeah, Shopify is like an end-to-end solution for e-commerce. Any business that wants to get involved with e-commerce, and they all should want to, Shopify can help them. They can help them with setting up websites, setting up portals, transactions, inventory management, whatever it takes to get your e-commerce business going. The business has been gaining traction for the last few years, building its client base, building its user base, building its transaction volume. The most recent news is with Prime Day. Amazon's Prime Day has now spilled over into the general retail environment or into e-commerce. Shopify commands about 30% of the e-commerce market share. So it certainly was well positioned for this past week. We're looking at growth being sustained. Profits are improving. The outlook is good. Pull it up real fast. Looking at 2.5 here. Yeah, another sequential and year-over-year gain is expected. Outperformance is the trend. Let's see here. I believe I just saw this one this morning. I believe the analyst trends are all positive too. Right. So Shopify is one of those weird names that shows up on the list of most downgraded stocks because the analysts have trimmed their price targets recently. However, they've trimmed them to a level that kind of coincides with a double-digit gain. Other than that, the trends include increased coverage and firming sentiment. I expect to see them put in a pretty good report. When they report in a couple of weeks, that should catalyze the analysts to begin lifting their price targets again. And we may see this stock price continue to move higher.
It's a good look at that one. Interesting about the Amazon Prime Day relation, because that was kind of all a lot of consumers were talking about all of last week. So a good mention there.
Because like Amazon, has their Prime, but also Walmart and Target and other retailers are also following suit. Shopify has, deals with Amazon where their merchants are able to cross-utilize the platforms. So there's lots of drivers for Shopify.
Very good. Well, Chris, let's move on to Reddit. This is a company most people probably know about, but what's the stock doing?
Sure, it's a social media stock. It's been in an uptrend. Let's just say that it's up about 24% in the last month and 49% over the last 3 months. But just to put that in perspective, it's still down about 10% for the year. So it was sold off sharply. So the company plays in that the social media space, the ad-driven, the global ad market, and all that. And so right now, one of the strengths that the company has is it's got a lot of user engagement. Both the daily and the weekly active users are moving much higher. So that's been bullish for the stock. There's a few things that analysts see as headwinds, and this is coming ahead of Reddit's earnings report, which will be happening right at the end of the month. I believe it's July 31st is the actual date of the earnings report. And so one of the problems or one of the concerns that analysts have is that Reddit is heavily dependent upon Google search for their traffic, for their new users. And so that's leading analysts to be concerned because that could leave the company vulnerable to changes in the Google algorithms that Reddit has no control over. The other couple of concerns are things that Reddit may have a little bit more control over, and that is they need to develop their development tools better so they can compete more effectively with a company like Meta. There's also some concern about their advertising technology may be less advanced than some of the other companies. But that, again, that's something that the company can work on, but that's also going to require a little bit of a spend. Right now, the stock, it's looking a little bit overbought to me. There's a little bit of a pullback right now. And again, it's kind of an interesting time because we're getting ready for earnings season, and it's trading just a little bit above the consensus estimate right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Very good. I'm going to fit in a few more names because we've got so many coming in. Thomas, this is a company we talked about plenty of times, and that's SoundHound. SoundHound has had such an interesting couple of months, year really, where it was doing so well and had the pullback. What's happening right now with SoundHound?
I think the market is establishing a pretty solid base right now. It appears to be in a bottom and in a reversal. We're waiting for the next earnings report to see what kind of catalyst it produces. But the company has been gaining traction, expanding its verticals, gaining new clients, deepening penetration, has all these positive tailwinds for its business, also has a very solid balance sheet. Analysts favor it. So again, the market seems to have it made it surge, late last year. It's pulled back. It's since hit a bottom. We're consolidating, putting in that solid bottom, building a solid support base. I think we just need a catalyst for it to move higher. I think it's going to come in the next earnings report.
Yeah, my one question about SoundHound is just looking at whether they're having the same momentum that they were when we saw that big boost for the stock, when they were getting the different contracts, and it really seemed like their growth was exponential. Have we seen a big slowdown, or is that really just a perception thing from investors?
Well, what really happened was there was that expectation for the growth. It happened with a lot of other stocks too, that big expectation for growth, but it didn't happen quite as fast as the market was expecting. So we had that big surge and boom in the price. Growth didn't happen as fast as we thought. The market has corrected, but since then, the company has been gaining traction. Growth is accelerating sequentially. The last 3 quarters, we've accelerated 4 quarters from 50% to 90% to 100% to 150% growth. We're going to sustain this high triple-digit level for the next couple of years. The forecasts are likely going to be cautious because the company is building traction with its client base, with its penetration. So again, I'm expecting to see the earnings report bring some more positive news with the cycle, more positive guidance, and just continue to lead this market back into the rebound, back into the rally and the movement that started last year but was too soon.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good look at SoundHound. Again, we used to cover this stock quite a bit, but it's legged off. So I like the little update on this one. Chris, I want you to dive into another one. We've talked about robotics, you and I, before. This is one, Serve, SERV. I think maybe we've mentioned this one before. But robotics are such an interesting sector right now with a lot of different investors looking at different robotics companies to invest in right now, just because there's so much growth in this sector. Let's take a look at Serve. I'm pulling up their stock chart right now. 1 year performance is good, but year to date, not so good. Might be behind the pullback?
I'm looking at that right now. I do remember I've talked about this company before. Right. So they're the one that have the autonomous sidewalk delivery for like the last minute logistics. It was kind of funny. I think I brought this up because the first time I was really familiar with this company was I saw it on my child's college campuses. And it was just hilarious. It's like all of a sudden, it's like, what is this? Here's this thing delivering stuff. And so I'm trying to take a look at this, Bridget, to see why it's down a little bit. It looks like it's a slowing revenue play. It doesn't generate that much revenue to begin with, and it's been down a little bit. So I think we're just seeing a slowing revenue story for a stock that's not profitable to begin with. But the analysts love it. It's got about 75% upside according to analysts, and Short interest is about 22%. So that combined with probably slower revenue is what's weighing down on the stock right now.
Right.
But it's one of those that if you have conviction, it might be something that's worth looking at. Again, earnings aren't going to be till mid-August, so investors may have a little bit of a wait on it. And again, the company's not profitable yet.
Right.
But
I think that Surf could be a good solid speculation for the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, it's a company, a stock ahead of its time.
It is.
If we're thinking about physical AI being the future of AI, this company is certainly one of the leaders developing robots. It just needs to continue developing its technology until it crosses that threshold, builds momentum, becomes really viable as a revenue producing company. And until then, it's like Chris is saying, there's a lot of fundamental flaws with it that are going to keep its stock price probably down and moving sideways.
Good. Well, we've had a lot of good discussion on a lot of stocks. We're getting close to our closing time. I'll cover just a couple more, and we're going to go to maybe some bigger names. I want to talk about what's happening with, I think, Apple right now. I think that's one that some people are looking at and looking at some of those Mag 7 names right now. Any moves or different things that we're seeing, things that we want to watch for in earnings season?
Just to talk about Apple specifically, I mean, that stock is down and it doesn't really seem to be having a lot of activity, and it'll probably stay down until they really wow the market with something about AI. That's the big drawback with Apple right now, is they're just not wowing anybody with their AI and what the future is going to hold for them. It's possible that they're going to disappoint the market and maybe the stock price will sell off. Until then, this is Apple we're talking about, so we give it the benefit of the doubt. But as I was saying, there's no impetus in the market to buy the stock, and you can see that in the stock price chart action.
Yeah, there's just a lot of noise around Apple right now. I mean, it as Thomas said, there's noise regarding its lack of AI solutions. There's just noise because of are they going to build in the United States or not, which they're not going to do. But it's just it's a very noisy stock right now, and they're not, as Thomas said, they haven't given investors a lot of reason to be bullish on it. At the same time, it's Apple, and it's got billions of dollars on its balance sheet, and you can see a scenario under which Apple starts to deploy that to make something happen.
Very good. Okay, one of the last individual stocks I'm going to talk about before we get into what you guys are watching this week for some potential market movers. We talked about Apple and their lack of innovation. Well, one area with a lot of innovation is those quantum computing stocks. There seems to be renewed interest from investors looking at this sector again. One of the names mentioned in the chat is IonQ. This is one of the leaders we've talked about before, and there's some good movement on the stock right now. Not any reaching new highs at all to where it was back at the start of the year when there was a lot of interest in the quantum computing stocks. But anything you want to say about this sector or this company, IonQ in particular?
I am trying to get a handle on it right now.
Right. Well, yeah, the stock looks like it might have hit its bottom, and it has been moving higher the last few weeks, few months. But I would bet that it's going to be range bound, probably hit resistance near 3250, because as much advancement as they have made, as brighter as the outlook has become, they're still not making money. And so that's going to really, hamper the price action and the investability of the stock for a while. So expect it to hit resistance around 3250, and then to continue moving sideways over the next year or two, couple years, until they start making money.
This is a speculative play. The whole space really is, and just because we say it's speculative doesn't mean that it's not worth buying into. But I think investors need to be realistic about how much they see these stocks going up, and more importantly, what time frame they expect those stocks to go up in. I think this is a fascinating space. It's a space that I have to admit I need to get a lot smarter on, in terms of I kind of have a bare bones understanding of where it's going, but to really say what the potential is, I think investors just have to be careful about how much of gain they expect and when they expect that to happen.
Yeah, more of a long-term play if you are interested in these. Thank you for bringing that up in the chat. I'm sorry I cannot get to all of the stocks that you guys listed. I've just been trying to pick out a few here and there, but I'd love to see all of the names that were shared today. I'll add them to the list of ones that we might look into next week too on this live stream. But I'm always going to end these by asking Chris and Thomas, what are you watching this week? I know earnings starts really in earnest on Wednesday. There's other talks about tariffs. Are there any rate cut discussions that you're keeping your eye on? Any other numbers coming out this week that could be big market movers that investors watching now should really pay attention to?
Yeah, I think for me this week, it's just going to be the start of earnings. Mostly that's going to be the financial companies, JP Morgan, the big banks. For them, for themselves specifically, but also for what they can say about the rest of the economy. I expect to see consumer spending still be pretty solid. Commercial banking probably still pretty solid. I expect to see some outperformance among the group. Other than that, there's not a lot of data coming out, so it'll mostly be tariff headlines that move the market this week.
Yeah, I can't say I'm thinking that it's going to really move the market, but you certainly are going to start seeing. You're going to get the CPI out tomorrow morning, and you see the PPI out on Wednesday. Again, the only thing there is going to be whether or not those numbers shock to the up or the down, and I don't expect either one to be shocking one way or the other. Certainly, if there was a shock one way or the other, that could be moving the market because it could change expectations for a rate cut, but I don't expect that to happen. A more interesting one for me, Bridget, will be retail sales comes out on Thursday, I believe. And that, to me, that might be something that's a little bit more market moving. So far, we've seen the consumers have been remarkably resilient. Again, I don't expect that we're going to see a big surprise with that one, but again, that if you were to start seeing retail sales trend significantly lower, that might be an area of concern for the market. And again, it might be one of those scenarios where if you got bad news, it might actually turn into good news, because then that might be the catalyst that prompts the Fed to move faster on interest rates than they would want to go.
I think the numbers that come out of the Prime Week sales, I've heard of a lot of people shopping during all of the big promotions happening over the last week, but I think that data will really be interesting to see how it compares to the last year or previous years. I don't know about you guys, I didn't buy much this year, so we saved on the stuff coming into our household, which I'm happy about. So lots of data to keep an eye on this week. Thomas, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to dive into all these stocks as they come on the fly. And we really appreciate everyone who tuned in today to join us live and add some names to the list of companies for us to discuss. Again, I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to all of them today. Also sorry of some of the audio issues going in and out today. I appreciate you guys bearing with us and sticking with us through this broadcast. They do replay live if you want to go back and watch again some of the names that came out today. If they're new to you, you can replay and go back and listen to some of them too. Thanks again for watching, everyone. As always, we appreciate you here at MarketBeat, and happy investing.